And if you look at these soil cores, this is showing a big wad of corn stalks at 8 inches in depth that's basically 2 years old. Didn't decompose. So why doesn't the corn stalks decompose? Big reason being, there's no soil structure in that drummer. There's no air in the soil. It's too compacted. And it also doesn't have any soil life at all, and no fungi in there to break down the organic in the corn stalk. We put a year of cover crop on it, then went back and tested it, and every bit of the corn stalks are completely gone. If you look at the picture on the far right of it, it'll show plant roots hitting those corn stalks and turning sideways. Those stalks buried in the soil actually are toxic to the corn. So they won't go through it. So we're looking at different cover crops. If you look at the plots right out here, there's two types of cover crops basically in general categories: a summer cover crop and then a fall winter cover crop. Right behind me we've got sorghum sudan, and pearl millet. Those are summer cover crops that you plant after wheat. If you're looking at prevented planted acres, you want to build some organic matter, loosen some soil up. The real fine looking grass that looks like a tall yard grass over there is teff, and it's a summer grass. It's a summer annual. So as soon as it gets below 40 degrees, it's going to die. So it makes it a summer plant that we can get some tonnage on organic matter, help loosen some soil, and improve the soil quality. The rest of the ones that you see out here, I got cereal rise. That's the Guardian variety. That's just barely coming up. It's amazing to get cereal rye to grow at all this early. I mean, in the middle of summer. Normally, it's a winter annual type plant, cereal grain, but normally doesn't grow until it gets cooler in the fall. You see the radishes out there as well. They got a good stand of radishes. We've looked at them. Radishes are real touchy because radishes grow by day length and temperature. We've got a nice root on it from what they grew, which surprises me because typically summer seeded radishes don't produce much root at all. Mainly because they're not designed to. They're designed to grow in the fall. If I planted radishes in April, like some people want to do, you'll get 2 leaves, a bloom, and they die, and the root won't be big enough to over 1 inch in depth because they don't grow in day length where days are increasing. So just don't waste your money planting them in the spring like some people did last year. So you can do that. Cereal rye is one that we use quite a bit. Again, we saw that one there. There's a lot of advantages as to the different cover crops that we're looking at. The radishes we looked at mainly for relieving compaction, as well as collecting nitrogen, holding the nitrogen so we don't lose it out the pile lines into the water supply. We're going to hear a lot about that this next week when they release the hypoxia report on the Gulf. So they'll help hold it there until the end of spring when they decompose and start releasing. Cereal rye will do the same thing, and we're looking at that. Hairy vetch, we normally don't see much of that grown here. It's winter hardy here, but you don't get a benefit out of hairy vetch until it gets growth on it. Hairy vetch gets all of its growth in the month of April. So if you want to produce nitrogen, you can produce up to 200 pounds per acre with hairy vetch, but you got to wait till the 10th or 15th of May to get it. If you're in grain sorghum production, that fits just perfect because we got to get 70-degree soil temperatures to plant grain sorghum. Hairy vetch will normally supply 100% of all the nitrogen you need for a grain sorghum crop, up to about 130, 140 bushels. So that's an option. Crimson clover is also used as a legume. It's a winter annual legume. I know some folks have dealt with red clover in the past. Red clover is hard to kill, really hard to kill. I mean, to the point that we got to use dicamba to kill it, Banville, because everything else doesn't work on it. Crimson clover will die by itself the first week of June, so it's not an issue. it will also produce 120 to 140 pounds of nitrogen by the middle of May. So if we're looking at something that we're planting later, or you plant it earlier and take less nitrogen, that's an option as well. Annual ryegrass is a forage grass that's really good for relieving compaction and collecting nitrogen. We're finding it's one of the best ones we have to sequester nitrogen and hold it clear into spring and turn it loose back to the corn crop. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. You asked me to talk real quick about seeding rates, and we've got a lot of different seeding rates. If you really are looking at cover crops, what I might mention is we've got a website that we've developed in cooperation with Michigan State University. It's called MCCC, Midwest Cover Crop Council .msu, Michigan State University.edu. If you go on there, we developed what we call is a cover crop decision tool. You can go in there and put your home county on, state, home county, and it will give you a list of what cover crops, the planting dates, seeding rates of every cover crop for your soil type in your area, and your planting date. We've got the complete weather base from NOAA in there, so it will give you the exact dates that you can plant. So it's real quick and easy. You can put all kinds of options in there, what you want to do with it, and it'll help you do that. So that's available. Typically radishes, a lot of folks seed them at 10-15 pounds per acre, and that's the best way I know of to have everybody in the world cussing at you in the following spring whenever they smell so bad. And normally it causes all kinds of problems with emergency services and fire trucks and everything else coming out to find out about the natural gas leak in your fields. Radishes collect high volumes of sulfur, and if you want to improve your soil test on sulfur, plant radish. We'll see it raise our soil test on sulfur from low to very high in 1 year. But when they die in the wintertime, because they freeze at about 15 to 20 degrees in February, where you get a couple days it pops up and warms up 50 degrees or something, well, all that radish starts volatilizing sulfur dioxide to the point that you don't really want to be standing downwind within a quarter mile of that field. So typically we recommend 4 to 5 pounds and mix it with 20 to 25, 30 pounds of oats. My understanding from the first two groups is you got a little problem with mare's tail. We've had mare's tail problem for the last 40 years at my house. This is a trial that we've run. I'll pass that around so you can look at it. That's a cereal rye seeded heavy, 80 pounds per acre, and you will notice a clear notch in there. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of dark plants all the way around. Mare's tail. That mare's tail got 32 ounces of Power Max the 1st of May, and 32 ounces of Power Max the 1st of June, and that picture was taken about the 7th or 8th of June. And the only effect I saw from the second application of Power Max was it greened up the mare's tail a real dark green from all the ammonium sulfate I had in the Power Max. It has no effect on it. That's 64 ounces of Power Max and no control. If you look at the picture, where we had cereal rye, we have 0 mare's tail in the field. We removed the cereal rye the 15th of May to find out how long it would last. And we were in late June, 1st of July before we saw any mare's tail start to come up. And we did not plant a crop, we left the plot fallow. So we had no canopy effect from any of the cover crops, any of the corn or soybeans in the field. If we had a soybean crop to come in canopy, no problem at all. But we also removed all the cereal rye residue. We didn't leave the mulch. If we would have left the mulch, we'd have better control of that. But we didn't see any problems until July. In fact, this spring we left that plot idle just to check, and it's still, the blocks are still there. No mare's tail in those blocks. So, if you got mare's tail problem, you can fix it by just planting a cover crop. That mare's tail, when we tested it, is resistant to the full 64 ounces of Power Max. It's resistant, tolerant to a quart of 2,4-D and a full rate of first rate. Has no effect. We're looking right now at water hemp, and we're looking at Palmer's amaranth. using cereal rye, and we're getting an effect off of water hemp with cereal rye used multiple years in a row as a cover crop and leaving the residue on the field. We're seeing reductions every year on the water hemp. We're looking at it for Palmer's amaranth right now as well. The question was, do we get the control from cereal rye by the allelopathic chemicals in it, or do we get it from the cover? We get it from both. We see the effect from both. And the reason I say that is because when you drill cereal rye, and I'm known to daydream once in a while, I'll get wide on my rows. If you get to 20 inches width between the rows on the cereal rye, you will have a mare's tail come up in dead center in that bare gap. If I get wider than that, I can get more mare's tail, but it'll always be 8 to 10 inches from the nearest cereal rye plant. So it can't be all shading, but it is some shading, I'm sure. But if it was all shading, then the mare's tail would grow right up against the cereal rye. We wouldn't have that 10-inch gap on either side. So it has to deal with the allelopathy as well.
Mike, when are you planting the rye?
Where are we planting?
When are you planting it?
When do you plant cereal rye? Cereal rye basically can normally plant it about the same time as wheat. You can plant it a little bit earlier if you want. You can get up into maybe the 20th of September or back in there, because a lot of guys are looking at cereal rye with radishes. And we got to have radishes planted by the 15th or 20th of September. So we can back it up that high or that early, or we can run it later and plant it after a crop up to the 1st of November without any problem.
Do you think you're getting some impact from just from the tillage of the drill on that mare's tail? When you're looking at early October, we've got a lot of winter annuals have germinated, and the mare's tail is easy to tear out with tillage. You think there's maybe a third impact there?
Not at all. I don't see any impact at all because we're not doing any tillage with the drill. In fact, you can run the drill and we don't even see where you've been. So when the drill goes through, it doesn't throw any dirt at all. There's no